Radha Radhe. Today is Saturday, 20th June 2026, and here we are to present to you this recap video for our Bhagavad Gita study session, continuing along our journey of chapter 13. Along with me, here is Mummy.
Radhe Radhe.
As I bring up the slides, you'll see that we covered today chapter 13, verses 27 and 28. After the usual recap quiz, that was for last week's content, chapter 13, verses 25 and 26. As always, if you take a look at the description for the video, you'll get the link to the free community portal page for this Bhagavad Gita series, where you can get all these slides you'll be seeing week after week, everything organized, as well as many other sources of material for your learning reference. With that, let us get into today's first verse, chapter 13, verse 27.
Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam sthavar jangamam kshetra kshetragnya sanyogat tad vidhi bharatarshabha.
Chapter 13, verse 27 has the catchphrase as a question to ponder: dynamic field. As we discussed in the session, is the field dynamic? That's yes or no for us to decide. We now know the answer, of course, but also dynamic in two senses. Dynamic in terms of, oh, it has a lot of, personality. That's one aspect. The other, the simpler one, is about moving versus non-moving. We know the answer. Both are covered over here because Sri Krishna says that there are both the aspects, moving beings and non-moving beings. They each are combinations of the field of activities and the knower of the field. In other words, as we saw in the session, moving beings, we're commonly used to them, human beings, animals, that sort of type, we know and expect that they are in a body, that's the field of activities, and there is a knower of that individual field, that is, of course, there's a soul in them. We, of course, also know there's a supreme soul that's going to come up again as a reminder in the next verse. But here, at least, it's a combination of that body, that field of activities, and the knower, which is the soul. But also non moving things, such as plants, trees, stones. These as well have both the existence that they are a field of activities and they have the presence of a knower of that field, which is that soul. Seems surprising to many of us, perhaps hearing it if for the first time, but indeed now this is coming from Sri Krishna himself, telling it to Arjun, the best of the Bharats. And so, as we saw in the session, Swamiji has in the commentary given the contrast between the Abrahamic traditions versus what we're seeing here from Vedic philosophy, which also then helps us understand the importance of right being nonviolent. And then in the second paragraph, we also talked about in the session the example given of Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose, famous Indian scientist. As I had mentioned, he presented at the Royal Society of London to 300 plus fellows. Unfortunately, it was not accepted, so it took many, many years for all that to get published. But he had conducted experiments. You can take a look online if you like, The Secret Life of Plants. And in that, he showed that if you use living tissue to represent, moving beings, humans, animals, you provide that element of sensation, touch, some kind of intervention. There's a response there. There are emotions. He was able to replicate those in plants as well, in the leaves and so on. So this, as Swamiji says, indicates again, if you look at a tree, you look at a stem or leaves, they also have that element of, you tend to them as a gardener does, you do it with love and care. They have the elements and emotions of happiness. In contrast, they sense or perceive violence, and there are vibrations that indicate that negative aspect. Again, all this, as Mummy mentioned in the session, is to do with the unity of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Next up, let us look at chapter 13, verse 28.
Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyatsva avinashyantam yah pashyati sa pashyati.
So chapter 13, verse 28 also has a catchphrase as a question, solely seen. Remember again, we talked about the homophone here, SOLE and SOUL, both being applied over here. Because Sri Krishna says alone, they alone truly see, who recognize that Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, accompanies each of us, each person, each soul, as in the being form. And likewise, of course, SOUL, the soul, only the soul can see that. The soul will see truly that, oh, we are beyond this body. We're, encased in the body at this point, but that lifetime continues one after the other. The body perishes, the soul continues. The soul truly, with God realization, gets to realize and see that there is the Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, in every being as well. So, as we see in the translation here, it's only those who truly see that Paramatma accompanying the soul in all of the beings. And that is again the imperishable nature of the soul and the Supreme Soul, of course, in contrastingly, of course, the perishable body. For this verse, of course, Mummy had talked about Pashyati. She'll probably present that again, the contrast there or the parallel as well for see, SEE, as well as perceive. And then Swamiji, of course, reminds us of what we had as homework question, at least I think a couple of times this season for chapter 13, chapter 10, verse 20, chapter 10, verse 11, chapter 8, verse 4. Coming up much later, chapter 18, verse 61. All these talk about God being seated in our heart, and we know it is as the Paramatma aspect. We also get a reminder of chapter 13, verse 23, very recently conducted, and that is also related to this Bhagavatam shloka here. God is seated in all living beings as the witness. Remember the Mundaka Upanishad story with the two birds. And so we have us perched as one bird, lower on the tree, physically as well as spiritually, and enjoying our fruit, literally as well, and with backs turned away from God. God being here represented by that other bird, the superior bird, the one at the slightly higher platform or branch. And that is God, of course, as the silent witness, the observer. So, several other examples Swamiji gives. He has the Shvetashvatar Upanishad, he has the Ramayana. In all these, of course, again, it is stressing the presence of God, the Supreme Soul, in each of us, accompanying us in each of those forms. Last time, if you remember, we had the quiz question about the pig, the insect, the snake, the deer. Doesn't matter which being it is, God is inside accompanying us, which again gives us the chance to eventually be able to progress back, if it's a non human form, to a human form, and then at some stage, hopefully, to the divine abode of God. Keeping all that in mind, Mummy, it's over to you to explain the verses and add to our Sanskrit dictionaries as well.
Thank you, Gagan. So, from verse number 27, the important word I want you to see is Sanyogat. Sanyogat means combination of. It is very important because this verse explains that there is combination of Kshetra and Kshetragnya. Okay, everything is born out of union of Kshetragnya and Kshetra. That is interaction between material nature, field of activities, that is body, which is made of Panchbhutas, Kshetra, and the soul or consciousness, that is Kshetragnya. That is what is the knower of the field. So, without the touch of the conscious soul, matter cannot grow or function. All life forms, from trees, mountains, humans, animals, all contain both of these elements. So, the word sanyogat, that means the combination or union. It's very important in this verse. And then verse number 28, let's see the word tishthantam. Tishthantam means accompanying or residing. So, what is happening? Krishna is saying, first we learned about Kshetra, Kshetragni. The body, field of activities, and the individual soul, Kshetragnya, knower of the field. Now the very important thing is what is accompanying everybody through the cycles of birth and death. That is the supreme soul that is residing, Tishthantam, accompanying. It is residing in every living being. That is what we have to understand. So, Krishna, through these two verses, is teaching us that whatever we see around us or whatever is manifesting around us, they all have these three elements. One is their body, which is made out of material energy, one is their individual soul, and then the Paramatma, the divine soul. Atma and Paramatma, the divine soul. So everybody we is made out of these three things. Now the body is perishable because it is made out of material energy, but the individual soul and the supreme soul, they are imperishable, they are eternal. So they are accompanying in any body form that you keep on taking through the cycles of birth and death. So basically, these verses are going to have a very transformative implication as to how we perceive reality. Okay? When we recognize that the same divine principle animates everything in existence, we develop to we begin to develop a more unified vision of life. So the stone, the tree, the animal, and human, they all exist because of the same union of field and the knower of the field. Nothing can manifest without the essential combination. And then there is the presence of divine that exists in everything. So then we start understanding the sacred nature of all existence. Nothing can exist without God's divine presence. So it inculcates in us then universal love and respect. So our interactions with the world will become more reverent and compassionate. And we start recognizing the interconnectedness through this shared cosmic principle. And Sri Krishna is talking about Bharatarshabha. Bharatarshabha means he is suggesting that this understanding is especially important for those in the positions of leaderships, because then once leaders recognize this, then they can govern with greater wisdom and compassion. Okay, so in verse number 28, Krishna is saying, um, that when the physical form perishes, it is only the soul that remains untouched. And that is what teaches us the vast difference between impermanence of matter and permanence of the supreme reality. So, this requires a little more than intellectual acceptance, yes, because now there is an awakening of our perception that changes how we experience everything. So, this verse, there's a distinction between Yaf Pashyati, Sa Pashyati. Yaf Pashyati means seeing, but Sa Pashyati means truly seeing. Usually, most of us, we just see the surface, but to recognize that one, what that illumines all that, that needs a healthy vision. That is what we need to develop. So, Krishna is saying only He alone sees, who really understands that there are total three entities: Kshetra, Kshetragnya, and the Supreme Soul. So, Now, this is not just a philosophical idea, this is a transformative way of looking at the world. So, what happens when we start seeing that divine in everybody and we are aware of it at every moment, that God is in the stone, God is in the animal, God is in the insect, in the butterfly, in the tree, in the flower. So our way of looking at things totally changes. We become more compassionate, and with our human beings, then that tendency to foster resentment or envy or malice, that subsides because we start seeing God in everybody. And that is how the beginning of equanimity, it it starts in us, within our awareness, because we think that everybody is same, everybody has that spiritual equality, rather than we stay away from temporary distinctions or conflicts. So Krishna's instruction also serves as a remedy for the existential anxieties. What happens? We are having lots of anxieties because we are all the time thinking as a surface or as the physical body. But once we, what are those anxieties? That fear of loss or death or insecurity. So, but once we are aware and we understand that there is this soul and supreme soul which is imperishable, which cannot be destroyed, automatically our perspective becomes more steady and fearless, because we now understand that soul is eternal. It is going to accompany you, Tishthantam. It is going to be residing in any body you go from, through the lifetime of cycle and cycles of birth and death. So that is how then slowly you are getting real liberation or moksha or freedom, because then you are not fearful. You have understood the real formula of this life, that only this body, which is made of Panch Bhutas, that is going to perish, but the soul is eternal and Supreme Soul is always accompanying us. That God is all the time with us. So then we start everybody seeing everybody as an eternal soul enveloped in the radiance of the Supreme Soul. And that is when we are then starting to make a unbreakable bond of spiritual kinship with everybody, because that our feeling is going to change. Swamiji has given examples from different scriptures. Okay, so one is from Shvetashvatar Upanishad, which says, Eko Deva Sarva Bhuteshu Gura Sarva Vyapi Sarva Bhutantar Atma. That means God is one. He resides in the hearts of all living beings and He is omnipresent. He is the supreme soul of all souls. Then from Bhagavatam, he says, Bhavan hi sarvabhutanam atma sakshi swadrig vibho. That means God is seated inside all living beings as the witness and the master. He is witnessing everything, noting down, but He is always with us. Okay, that is the thing. So, Krishna is emphasizing that Supreme Lord is Paramatma, and that is like a silent, impartial observer present in every living being. And also, see, there is example given in scriptures of gold. Gold you can mold into different shapes, ornaments, forms. But when it is melted, again, it is what remains is gold. That gold remains constant. So, same is that divine, that eternal soul, that supreme soul, that remains the constant in every living being. So that is what we have to understand. So from Ramayana it says Ram Brahma Chinmaya Binasi Sarbar Hit Sab Ur Purbasi. What does this mean? The Supreme Lord Ram is eternal and beyond everything. He resides in the hearts of all living entities. So that is what these verses are teaching us. Krishna is saying that the Supreme Soul is accompanying you all the time, and start seeing this world around you with a healthy vision that God is living in every entity, and so become more compassionate and feel more interconnected with everyone. Over to you, Gagan.
Yeah, thank you, Mommy. And I'm reminded of a couple of things before I wrap up, of course, with the flyer that I did not cover earlier. So, here, remember in the session I had mentioned we've commonly seen charam and acharam. Here we have two new words for moving and non-moving. So, jangamam is moving. The opposite of that, sthavar, is unmoving or non-moving. So we've seen charam with a attached to it, it's acharam, the opposite. Here we have a new pair of these opposites, these antonyms, jangamam and sthavar. Keep that in mind. The other thing I recall mentioning in the session, and Mummy has said this in a way as well, this whole unity and recognizing or perceiving with a completely different vision and illumination. I think it also stresses here this aspect Swamiji has. The soul is the source of consciousness. The body is made of the insentient material energy. We are beginning to understand more and more of that. And now let's go back to, of course, the Supreme Soul, always existent, eternal. And there is the material energy, one of the energies of God, also always existing, but latent before the process of creation. God glances at that. As the Supreme Soul, He gives the power to that inert, latent, insentient material energy. And then there is that unity of the field of activities and the knower of the field. And of course, as we have seen, the process of creation unfolds. With all that knowledge from today's two verses, let us take a look at the flyer that we had discussed. The question being, what's a moving fact that activates your combined sight and knowledge? As we had discussed, of course, we have this lovely garden here. We have the lady on the bench. We have the gardener. We have several birds. We counted at least six of them that are visible on the upper branches there on the left side. And then we also have plants, flowers, leaves, trees, and so on. So, a moving fact, a fact that is not just touching, but it's also interesting to us. A moving fact, pun, moving as well as non moving. The fact is that, yes, it is not just moving beings, but also non moving beings that have the presence of soul in them. They are a combination. So, this combined sight and knowledge that is being activated for us is the fact that the field of activities we are now recognizing or beginning to recognize and perceive through physical eyes, and as Mummy said, seeing deeper beyond the surface with this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, that all these beings, moving and non moving, are a combination of the encasement, the body, the field of activities, and the knower of that field, which is the soul providing consciousness. So keep that in mind as you continue your spiritual journeys. Of course, once again, a reminder, enjoy the Dallas Yoga Fest taking place this weekend. And of course, tomorrow being the International Day of Yoga. All that, of course, this wisdom is an element of everyone's yoga-based, yoga-based bhakti journeys. We look forward to seeing you next time. That's going to be Saturday, 27th June 2026, 8 a.m. Central Time, 6:30 p.m. India time. Till then, thank you so much. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.